Ladies and gentlemen, gather round as I present to you the story of our revolution as you have never heard it before. I have traveled far and wide to gather these stories of those who lived during our great war for independence. Here I have come to share those stories with you. Dazzled by the moving images of our grand machine as it brings to life the visions of my journey. These are stories of liberty lost, of those who took a stand, of the trials of battle, and those who liberty forgot. Now, come close. This first story was told to me by George Hughes when I traveled to Massachusetts. He was a shoemaker who joined a crowd in front of the Boston Customs House in March of 1770.
I was there at the beginning of the violence, at the massacre in Boston. What started out as a dispute over a barber's bill turned into a riot. I was soon on the ground among them. The Redcoats came to America to subjugate us, to enforce the acts that took our liberties from us. On that day in Boston, men lost their heads. Three of our citizens were dead on the spot. Just as their lives were taken, so is our liberty. Both are fragile and easily lost.
George told me of just one of many instances that brought us to rebellion. In April of '75, at Lexington and Concord, we stood against the Redcoats, this time armed, and this time we fired back. Militias all over the colonies were called out in opposition to the British in Boston. But while the British were besieged in New England, Lord Dunmore was leading Redcoats in Virginia. He was burning property, rallying the Loyalists. Billy Flora stood against Dunmore at Great Bridge. He told me a story of courage.
I was born a free man in Virginia. When the war came, I fought against Lord Dunmore's Loyalists and British regulars at Great Bridge. I knew nothing of war. I found myself on picket when the British approached.
Come on, Billy! We gotta get back to the work!
spot to spot, keeping up a sharp file. I did all I could to delay them and give the others time to prepare. I made my way back to our lines. The bullets were whistling all around me. They celebrated me as a hero for that. At Great Bridge, the determination of those who fought on both sides made it clear to me. This was not just a rebellion. This was a revolution that would change the world.
At Great Bridge, it was made clear the way to liberty was to fight. Independence was but a whisper then. It was small victories like Billy's and larger events in Boston that brought many to join our cause of liberty and independence. Attempts at reconciliation with Britain fell on deaf ears. As a result, the Continental Congress declared our independence from Great Britain on July 4th, 1776. But in the city and the country, in communities and the home, many would remain divided on whether to remain loyal to the king. When I met Isabella Ferguson, she told me a story of a family divided by revolution.
My husband's brother was a loyalist colonel. One day, he came to our home to enlist my husband to fight for the British.
We are assembling the militia to join the British troops under Cornwallis. It may be that when this quarrel is over, I shall be made a lord. How then should I feel in hearing it is said my brother was a rebel?
James, you know we cannot talk about this.
Stay. James, I am a rebel. Glory is in the name. My brothers are rebels and the dog Trip is a rebel too. Rebel and be free. That is my creed. We have often talked it over, and you have never justified the British coming here to make slaves of us. We who would die first. In the presence of the British Army, I tell you, if you go with them, you may stay with them, for I will no longer be your wife.
Isabella remained defiant that day and chose her path with courage and conviction. But no matter what choice they made, liberty and our resolve was tried on the field of battle. Through moments of great courage and perseverance, they gave their all to secure our liberty and our independence. John Howland once told me a story of a time when all seemed lost.
I was a soldier in Washington's army. I was with him in Princeton. It was a time to try both soul and body. Many lacked the courage to stand and fight. Just when I seemed lost, General Washington appeared. I saw him brave the dangers of the field, his life hanging by a single hair, as it were.
Hold your line!
1,000 deaths flying around him.
ready to march over the ground again. I will never forget what I felt at Princeton. Washington's greatness is far beyond my description. Believe me, I thought not of myself that day.
They were resilient men who understood that the road to liberty is a difficult one. They were not professional like the British. They were citizen soldiers, farmers, laborers, tradesmen. They were white, black, Indians. All put liberty before all else. I met another one of these men on the bank of the river that bared the name of his tribe. His name was Peter Harris, a Catawba Indian from South Carolina. His words were not a story, but a question about what happens when the battle is won.
I fight against the British for your sake. Will I gain anything by their defeat? I bled in battle so that you might be independent. Will the independence of my people be remembered? Will your liberty be achieved at the cost of my own?
What will we learn from Peter's story? What questions about our revolution remain unanswered? Will his liberty be lost at the cost of our own? What about the others? What are their stories trying to tell us? In the end, I went to the place where I hoped all my questions would be answered. Where by a miracle and with help from the French, we faced Cornwallis's army in a siege that would decide the fate of the war. I went to Yorktown. I walked among the ruins of a great battle. The scars of the trenches, now long overgrown.
What brings you here?
I came to see where our great revolution ended. Why else?
Ended? Sir, this is where it all began. There's still much work to be done. Liberties, an equality won. That was a tool of their revolution. Our voice and our votes will be ours.
It was a great realization. It is here where our story begins. For a country founded on individual freedom and the consent of the governed is truly a revolutionary one. A revolution worth fighting for, and one that is ours to carry on. May we learn from them to prize our liberty and respect its fragility, to remain watchful at attempts to take it, to take action when we feel
it is at risk. To be mindful that our question be for the common good, not to take the liberty of others to achieve our own. To fight for liberty in our time for those who have not yet received it. And to remember that to stand for liberty is often the road less traveled and one of great adversity. The fate of a revolution is for you to decide.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for coming to see us today here at the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown. We are going to be talking about artillery. My name is Ashley. I'll be the gun captain for today. And what we have on the gun deck behind us today are the three major types of artillery used during the American Revolution. So first, in the red box here with the small barrel, that there is a mortar. Next to it, in the wheeled carriage, but also with the short barrel, is a Royal Howitzer. And then the one right next to Dawn and the two at the end, I bet y'all can tell me what those are called.
Cannons.
Cannons, exactly. Now I'm going to let you know, the term gun is also used to describe a cannon as well, so you might hear me go back and forth in that terminology. Now it's important to note that all of our artillery reproductions we have here today are field weapons. These are not the ones typical of sieges. When we're talking about the 130 plus weapons that are at the siege of Yorktown between the French and the Americans, they were not likely having these types. So if these are meant for open field battles, not siege, what do you think that tells you about the siege weapons?
Much larger.
So much bigger. We're not moving them. That's why we have field guns out here. We did not want to have to deal with moving the siege guns. But even if we don't have the siege guns out here, looking at the mortar and howitzer can give you an idea of the key features necessary for siege artillery. Looking at those two pieces where Colt's at, what are those tubes, those barrels doing compared to, say, the cannon? They're shorter, and what else? Higher. So what can they do with their shot? Lob it. That's huge for sieges because that can go up and over all those earthenwork fortifications that the British have been digging around Yorktown and building up. So very commonly they're firing bombs and shells. So this is a small version of one. It's a hollow metal sphere filled with black powder, and you have this wooden piece here, the fuse, that's also filled with black powder. These little notch marks on the side. What do you think those notch marks represent?
Timing.
It's the timer, exactly. So they're going to cut this down to the time they want, and they'll fit in nice and snug. They'll rest that in the mortar or the howitzer, and when that's fired, that explosion will carry around and ignite the fuse, and that will travel through the air, up and over the enemy's heads, up and over their walls, and when this explodes, what's it going to create? Exactly. So not only do you have the explosive damage of those shells, you have the shrapnel damage of those shells. There are accounts from British soldiers who survived the siege of Yorktown that just talked about the psychological terror of just constantly hearing the word shell being shouted because they know one of these is about to land and cause a considerable amount of damage, whether against a structure or against the humans there. And also, let's say it lands and it doesn't go off. What do you think is going through the mind of those soldiers?
Don't go near it.
When? Don't go near it. How? Where? Run. So even without going off, it can create confusion and chaos. That's psychological warfare again. They could also use this especially with the howitzer. That howitzer there, because of its angle, can be able to do bank shots, meaning it can ricochet off of angles and such and lob into the side of earthenworks. And when that does and that explodes, what's happening to that wall? It's gone. Exactly. So tremendously powerful. Remember, this is just a small version of one. They get big. So they are extremely devastating here at the Siege of Yorktown. And they do have cannons here at the Siege of Yorktown. Now, our field guns that we have out here are light 6-pound brass battalion guns. What did I just say that told you how heavy the cannonballs are?
6 pounds.
6 pounds, exactly. So this is the typical shot being fired out of a field cannon, a 6-pound solid iron shot. If they were to use this against the walls here at Yorktown, what's going to happen?
Not much.
Not much, exactly. This is all about using the right artillery, the right shot for the job. They are on a time crunch. They need Cornwallis to surrender before reinforcements arrive from New York. They're not going to waste their time with with field guns. They want those big shots. So the average weight of the cannon shot being used here at Yorktown, 24 pounds and bigger. This is devastating. That has the power to do serious damage against the structures. So yes, all three of these artillery pieces are being used here at the Siege of Yorktown, putting that pressure on Cornwallis that will lead to that surrender. But before you get to the siege of Yorktown, you have so many battles before that, and a lot of them are field battles using these types of pieces. We are going to put some modern ear protection in because OSHA wants to make sure we don't lose our hearing. I will be blowing a whistle also to let the farm know that we're about to fire so they're not startled. We are not doing a manual exercise. We are doing a combat load. So very few commands. This is just get it done on the battlefield. And once we have fired this weapon and we have secured it, make sure everything's safe, we'll drop the rope line and you guys can actually get closer looks at all our pieces. We can answer your questions, you can take pictures. But once again, when I say make ready, cover those ears. Good! Attention! Search the piece! Clear? Low! Make ready! Fire! Here's the piece! And as the crew is securing this, I want to thank you guys once again for coming out to see us. So at the end of the day, when it comes to these artillery crews, when it comes to the siege of Yorktown, which led to the victory of the American Revolution, it's once again not possible without all these men and women who are on these crews. So thank you guys so much for coming out to see us. Are we good? We're good. All right, come on up.